work start. He closed the connections which transferred the central portion of the upper lookout screen to a small micrometer screen at Breckenridge's desk, and plugged it into the first check station. Instantly, a point of red light, surrounded by a vivid orange circle, appeared upon the screen, low down and to the left of center, and the timing galvanometer showed a wide positive deflection. "Hashed again," growled Breckenridge. "I must be losing my grip, I guess. I put everything I had on that site, and missed it 10 divisions. I think I'll turn in my badge. I've cocked our perfect curve already, before we got to the first check station." His hands moved toward the controls to correct their course and acceleration. "As you were. Hold everything. Lay off those controls," snapped the computer. "There's something screwy, just as I thought, and it isn't you either. I'm no pilot, of course, but I do know good compensation when I see it, and if you weren't compensating that point, I never saw it done. Besides, with your skill and my figures, I know darn well that we aren't off more than 1/10 of 1 division. He's cuckoo. Don't call him. Let him start it, and refer him to me." "All X. I'll be only too glad to pass the buck. But I still think, Steve, that you're playing with dynamite. Who ever heard of an astronomer being wrong?" "You'd be surprised," grinned the physicist. "Since this fuss has just started, nobody has tried to find out whether they were wrong or not." "IPV Arcturus, attention!" came from the speaker curtly. "IPV Arcturus, Breckenridge," from the chief pilot. "You have been on my ray almost a minute. Why are you not correcting course and acceleration?" "Dr. Stevens is computing us and has full control of course and acceleration," replied Breckenridge. "He will answer you." "I am changing neither course nor acceleration, because you are not in position," declared Stevens crisply. "Please give me your present supposed location and your latest precision goniometer bearings on the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Venus, and your Tellurian reference limb, with exact time of observations, gyroscope zero planes, and goniometer factors." "Correct at once, or I shall report you to the observatory," E2 answered loftily, paying no attention to the demand for proof of position. "Be sure you do that, Guy, and while you're at it, report that your station hasn't taken a precision bearing in a month. Report that you've been muddling along on radio loop bearings, and that you don't know where you are within 7,000 kilometers. And speaking of reporting, I know already that a lot of you astronomical guessers have only the faintest possible idea of where you really are, plus, minus, or lateral. And if you don't get yourself straightened out before we get to W41, I'm going to make a report on my own account that will jar some of you birds loose from your upper teeth." He unplugged with a vicious jerk and turned to the pilot with a grin. "Guess that'll hold him for a while, won't it?" "He'll report us, sure," remonstrated Breckenridge. The older man was plainly ill at ease at this open defiance of the supposedly infallible check stations. "Not that baby," returned the computer confidently. "I'll bet you a small farm against a plug nickel that right now he's working his goniometer so hard that its pivots are getting hot. He'll sneak back into position as soon as he can calculate his results and pretend he's always been there." "The others will be all right then, probably, by the time we get to them." "Gosh, no. You're unusually dumb today, Breck. He won't tell anybody anything. He doesn't want to be the only goat, does he?" "Oh, I see. How could you dope this out with only the recorder charts?" "Because I know the kind of stuff you pilots are. And those humps are altogether too big to be accounted for by anything I know about you. Another thing, the next station, P6, I think is keeping himself all X. If so, when you corrected for E2, which is wrong, it'd throw you all off on P6, which was right, and so on. A bad hump at almost every check station. See? True to prediction, the pilot ray of P6 came in almost upon the exact center of the micrometer screen, and Breckinridge smiled in relief as he began really to enjoy the trip. "How do we check on chronometers?" asked P6 when Stevens had been introduced. "By my time, you seem to be about 2.5 seconds plus." "All X, 2.4 seconds plus. We're riding on 981.286 centimeters, to allow for the reversal and for minor detours. Bye." "All this may have been coincidence, Breck, but we'll find out pretty quick now," the computer remarked when the flying vessel was nearing the third check station. "Unless I'm all out of control, we'll check in almost 14 seconds minus on W41, and we may not even find him on the center block of the screen." When he plugged in, W41 was on the block, but was in the extreme upper right corner. They checked in 13 8/10 seconds minus on the station, and a fiery dialogue ensued when the computer questioned the accuracy of the location of the station and refused point-blank to correct his course. "Well, Breck, old onion, that tears it," Stevens declared as he unplugged. "No use going any further on these bum reference points. I'm going to report to Newton. He'll rock the observatory on its foundations." He plugged into the telegraph room. "Have you got a free high-power wave? Please put me on Newton, in the main office." Moving lights flashed and flickered for an instant upon the communicator screen, settling down into a white glow which soon resolved itself into the likeness of a keen-eyed, gray-haired man seated at his desk in the remote office of the Interplanetary Corporation. Newton smiled as he recognized the likeness of Stevens upon his own screen and greeted him cordially. "Have you started your investigation, Dr. Stevens?" "Started it? I finished it," and Stevens tersely reported what he had learned, concluding, "So you see, you don't need special computers on these ships any more than a hen needs teeth. You've got all the computers you need, in the observatories. All you've got to do is make them work at their trade." "The piloting was all X, then?" "Absolutely. Our curve so far is exactly flat ever since we cut off the starting power. Of course, all the pilots can't be as good as Breckinridge, but give them good computation and good checkpoints, and you shouldn't get any humps higher than about 0.5 centimeter." "They'll get both from now on," the director assured him. "Thanks. If your work for the trip is done, you might show my little girl, Nadia, around the Arcturus. She's never been out before, and will be interested. Would you mind?" "Glad to, Mr. Newton. I'll be a regular uncle to her." "Thanks again, operator. I'll speak to Captain King, please." "Pipe down that guff, you unlicked cub, or I'll crown you with a proof bar," the chief pilot growled as soon as Stevens had unplugged. "You and who else?" retorted the computer cheerfully. "Pipe down yourself, guy. If you weren't so darn dumb and didn't have such a complex, you'd know that you're the crack pilot of the outfit, and wouldn't care who else knew it." Stevens carefully covered and put away the calculating machine and other apparatus he had been using, and turned again to the pilot. "I didn't know Newton had any kids, especially little ones, or I'd have got acquainted with them long ago. Of course, I don't know him very well, since I never was around the office much, but the old tiger goes over big with me." Think you'll enjoy playing nursemaid all the rest of the trip?" Breckinridge asked caustically, but with an enigmatic smile. "Think so? I know so," replied Stevens positively. "I always did like kids, and they always did like me. We fall for each other like 10,000 bricks falling down a well. Why, a kid, any kid, and I team up just like Grace and Poise. What's gnawing on you anyway, to make you turn Cheshire Cat all of a sudden? By the looks of that grin, I'd say you had swallowed a canary of mine some way or other. But darned if I know that I've lost any." And he stared at his friend suspiciously. "To borrow your own phrase, Steve, you'd be surprised." And Breckinridge, though making no effort to conceal his amusement, would say no more. In a few minutes the door opened, and through it there stepped a grizzled four-striper,